everyone, this is Kelly and I am here to do a walkthrough of a deck that I have found to be really fascinating. This is actually a deck that I had for a while. It was one of the walkthroughs that I lost a couple walkthroughs, or I should say I didn't lose them. I accidentally erased them, and so sometimes once I've sort of done a walkthrough, it's hard to sort of go back and do the walkthrough again. But one of the benefits to that is that I've actually used this deck quite a bit, and so this is less of a first impressions and more of a a full review. We're obviously going to go through them card by card as we normally would, but this is something and the first one I had it broke down into different parts, but we're just going to get in here, look at this deck, and see what you think. But I left this out. I went through and put the cards back in order, but I left this out because this is the last reading that I did for myself. And the reason I wanted to leave this out is because what I love about this deck that I think is something that is very different, something that we don't see in Oracle decks all of the time, and it's one of the things that makes an Oracle deck for me stand out from amongst all the other Oracle decks that are out there in the world, is when there is sort of this inherent system put into place. There is a sense of intention about the way that the deck is created, and it brings something in kind of its own to the table, and this deck does. So I want to explain this real quick, but first let me just do a quick introduction. I just think of this as the Absolute Oracle, Oracle Les Absolus, by Ange de Gaia. I'm not entirely sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and the illustrations are from Gabriel Leroy, or Leroy, I'm not sure which that would be. The language of the deck is in 2 languages, excuse me, is in 2 languages on everything, the box, the cards, as well as the guidebook itself. It's clear that the language is originally French, that's the original language that it was created in. And there are a couple translation issues just in terms of the guidebook, but none of it renders it unreadable. You can just tell that this is a translation out of French and into English, and maybe not the English part not written by a native English speaker, but it is quite easy to read. There's no issues there. You can just tell that the original language was French. And so we have that here. Welcome to the heart of the absolute. This oracle isn't a divination game. The word game gets used instead of deck, I believe, because it's not really talking about it as in a game, like playing a game. So I think that's just an English translation. You'll see this in the guidebook as well. This oracle isn't a divination game like so many of them. It is the result of very long thinking about the accessibility of divinatory games in general. Designed by Ange de Gaia, illustrated by Gabriel Leroy, or Leroy, I'm assuming Leroy probably. The Absolute allows you to practice clairvoyance, guidance, ask for advice, or even converse with the universe. There are 64 cards and a booklet in the box itself. I love that. There's 64 cards. It's not that typical 44 cards there. There is a little bit, there's a more expansion of the number of cards. There's also a great deal of light and shadow mixed between all of them that is really fantastic. I do believe, and I think he talks about this more in the guidebook itself as well, this result of a very long thinking about like what kind of deck does this person want to create. I definitely think that is the case. It has that feeling of somebody really having been reading divination or working with divination for a long time, and then sitting down to figure out, like, if they were to make their deck, what would this look like what would this be, and you can really tell that, and that's to me a spectacular treat. The art is absolutely gorgeous, which doesn't hurt either, right? But let me just show you a couple. So it comes in a hard box. The inside of the cover is in French, and then there is a beautiful butterfly paper on the inside. It's just really beautiful. Just in terms of aesthetics, it's just gorgeous. It's a nice sturdy box. There's nothing here other than just a beautiful, nice and sturdy box. We have a full color guidebook with color images of the cards. Again, it is in French and English on either side. It comes with sort of this blank card here with the crystal grid on the one side, and then you can see the backings are that beautiful purple and blues butterfly on the back, which is just beautiful. It's not reversible, obviously, but again, that's not something that generally I worry about. Now, we're going to come to the cards, I promise, but I'm going to skip a little ahead because I think this is really important to understand about the deck as we go into it. In the guidebook, there is a spread, and it says here, this spread is specific to the Oracle L'Absolu and allows you to see the potential outcome of a situation. Excuse me. You are in a certain situation and you wish to know what it will end up to according to your potentialities. To do this, draw 4 cards and arrange them as follows. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this is really important and really awesome. So if we look at a card here, and we're obviously going to be looking at each one of these close up, but if you look at a card here, we have the card name in French and we have the card name in English. We have the number of the card. And then in French and English, we have 4 corners with keywords. Now, these aren't just random keywords, right? And they're not just 4 keywords. They are. So they are 4 keywords that go with the cards, but they're more than that. If you look at the guidebook, this layout here, this card represents the situation that's being experienced by the person that you're reading for, right? So this is the situation. This is the consultant's state of mind, so your querent's state of mind, either yours or whoever you're reading for. This is their state of mind in this situation. The third one is what resource, does the querent have at their disposal in this situation, to use in this situation. So what is the situation? What is the querent's state of mind? What is a resource that the querent has for themselves? And thanks to that resource, right? What's the possible outcome here? Now, each of these corners have that same connotation. So they are looking at the card in terms of what it would look like if it was in the position of the situation, the position of the mindset, the position of what resource is there, and the position of if it was an outcome. So these 4 corners represent these 4 things. Now, I have used this spread a lot just to try to get a feel for it. And I just really love that. I love that we are, it's not like and we're going to look at them all, I promise. I know I'm sort of doing things a little bit backwards by going right here, but this to me is the gold, right? This is like, okay, here's the gold in this situation. Is it a beautiful deck? Yes. I will say that before we go through the whole deck, it is a beautiful deck. So that's kind of a no-brainer, right? Yes, it's a beautiful deck. It's well made. The box is great. The cards are lovely. It shuffles well, even though it's quite a large size deck, but it does shuffle beautifully. Like it's a well put together deck. So there's that out of the way. We'll come back to that. But beyond all of that, there is this system at play here, which I think is fantastic. Now, going back to here's the introduction. there was something I wanted to talk. I think this talks about after many years of experience as a fortune teller or reader, I decided to offer them what I think is the ideal game. And I think that's the key. You can tell that this is somebody who has been reading in a cartomancy style for a long time, and now they are sitting down to say, okay, if I sit down and I'm going to do the work and I'm going to kind of put together this deck that really sort of pulls that knowledge together, and that's what this deck feels like, which again, I feel like is the real gold here, is this layout, as well as the corner cards like this. Now, obviously you could lay this out in you know, in a straight line or whatever, but understanding that the upper left speaks to the situation, to a state of mind of whatever this overarching card is. If we think about that as a state of mind, if we think about that as a resource, if we think about that as a potential outcome, and you could even use that, I think, coming from the past as well. You know, there's ways to tweak this as well, but that core is there that I think is really fantastic. Now, there is a woman and a man card, much like sort of old style fortune telling decks like Kipper or Lenormand, these types of things, which is something that I quite love. Now, they have said here, notice when the cards of the man or woman are picked in a guidance, they just tell you that they represent you or the energies that are present at that time. You can either pick another card if you want to support the guidance, or leave it like that, right? Understanding that, especially if this is just one card you're pulling, that, you know, just leave it at that as just being a message. There's really not another message for you for that day. I have actually had it show up randomly. I've also used it where you find the significant and look to either side, which is a great way to work with it. We'll talk about that at the end. I find this to be still very helpful. So for example, if I think about here, if this first, because this was an actual reading of mine, and so if I look to the first card, which speaks to, okay, what is a situation that I need to be working with, and we'll use this as an also example so you can see what we have here in terms of English texts. So the first card that I had regarding the situation, I pulled the woman, and it says, in a spread, the woman can be seen as the consultant, here represented by the triple goddess, the maiden mother, and the crone. She is a symbol of wisdom. She is the possessor. She possesses the power of intuition. She is a healer of the body and of the soul. Lunar being, she is linked to gestation and neo-paganism. It is the yin energy implying the material, I think it's saying amplifying the material, everything that is tangible. She is inertia, slow down, linked to the comfort zone. She represents anything linked to duality, divisible, multipliable. She makes a body from a cell with time and patience. So her situation is about inertia, but in this sense, inertia is this idea of slowing down, easing into that comfort zone here, right? And so, okay, we have this slow down, slow things down a little bit. Don't, you know, I tend to be ramped up a lot in terms of my mental space, especially. So I thought it was interesting that in the mental space, we have the card for communication, which in this position speaks to listening, like slow down and listen, right? That's really what I get. It's like, okay, slow down, you know, in this situation of just needing to slow things down a notch, take things down. You still want to keep up that energy momentum that I'm in, because it's not a negative right now, because I just did this reading for myself. So it's not that I'm in a negative, like amped up space, but I am in an energetic drive forward at the moment. And so the slow down is like, just slow down for a minute, right? Listen. Be in a position, be in a state of listening so that you can really hear what needs to be heard right now. So I thought that was really appropriate to what I needed to hear in the moment. And that was, I didn't have a particular question at hand other than what do I need to hear right now? So slow down and listen, right? The energy, so then we go to the third one, which is up here. The energy is kindness. Now, this is the treasure card. So let's just take a look at it. This is just a way for you to see kind of what you get with the keys. And I do tend to check, I have been checking these just because sometimes, like the translation into English, there's one I think that is a repeat. There's two of the same there's a repeat somewhere. I can't remember what it is. And so I just always want to, as I'm getting to know the deck, I've wanted to just kind of check in and make sure that I am understanding the card correctly. So here we have treasure. Gratitude is the action of thinking, raving about, enjoying what you see, touch, taste, smell, hear, enjoying what you have, what you crave, what you live here and now. Gratitude is not the result of a submission to anyone or anything, nor kind of politeness. It is merely the art of saying thank you to the universe every day to get your life to be what you want it to be. Say thank you for everything, even for the hardship you are living, because it leads you, helps you rise, gives you a higher conscious. The more you live with gratitude, the more you will have to thank for. So we have this idea of treasure. If it was a situation, it would be about an idea. If it was about the mind being in a place of focusing on materialism. If it is a resource, it is kindness, and this is in the position of a resource. I also sometimes look up the French word just to see if there is more that I can glean from that particular meaning than, you know, maybe fits into the word for kindness, you know, the word that is given, which has also been very interesting kind of exploration. But this idea of kindness as a treasure, just being kind, just being nice, having the resource of being able to offer kindness, like that really gave me goosebumps. I thought that was, because then what did that lead to? That leads to happiness and joy. Now, I have a hard time with jesters because I'm not a big fan of jesters. They kind of are a little bit creepy to me. I'm not afraid of jesters or clowns, but they do give me a little bit of like, I tend to have a negative reaction to them, but this doesn't seem to be, there are like impertinence, there is some, but there's also humor, and then we have the intrigue of the plot, so something may come of this. But in all, if you read this card, it is about happiness and joy and this types of things. So I really love this. It was like, slow down and listen. What resource that you have at your disposal is kindness, and exercising that kindness to self first and then outward is going to lead to happiness. But you have to slow down to be able to exercise and use that resource. So again, this is just one example of it, but what I love is that you have this reading, you know, this laying out the cards, and then those corners are matching it. So the top left, you're looking to the top left for the situation. The bottom right, you're looking to the bottom right for what's the state of mind. To top right, you are looking here at what resource do you have at your disposal, and then the bottom right is speaking to sort of a potential outcome utilizing that, if you utilize that, and then, you know, what you can do with that situation. So again, I know that we're looking at all of this before we even look at all of the cards, but I do think that this is what's, to me, the real joy in this particular deck. So I didn't want it to get lost, like somebody just walked through the walkthrough and then kind of get lost as we go through it. I just wanted that to be really clear how that worked. So let me put these back into, I've got everything else in order, and then we'll walk through the cards. Okay, so here we have the cards. Again, now that we're zoomed in, here is the back. You can see that there is a sheen to them. I do have some, you know, bright lights on because, you know, that I'm a reader. It's a gloss. It's not a high gloss. I don't have any issue. Like, I have used this deck. It doesn't, sitting here looking at it from my position, even with my lights, it doesn't bounce in my face. And so I quite like it. It's not, I think it's a little more than just like a satin, but it is not a high gloss. And I actually have a light that's an extra light than what I normally use that I'm kind of testing out, and I'm not really getting any bounce back of glare into my eyes. So I do actually quite like the cardstock. The art style is beautiful, flowy. I haven't sat down to like parse out like females and versus males. I would say that it feels more on the feminine side of things in terms of the art style and artwork, but it is really gorgeous. And yeah, the art side is just beautiful and very appealing. A lot of purple tones to it. Let's just read this absolute. Now, what's interesting is that, so this is the card, the Absolute, or the Absolute. Here we do have the card where it says soulmates. Living according to your nature isn't easy when you have to adapt to a system that doesn't suit you. However, in itself, the union of the masculine and feminine sides creates a sacred balance that shows us the way. Probe your soul and your heart to find comfort as well as love and genuineness, the Absolute, because it is where your divineness and most precious riches live. So, you know, if it's a situation, we're talking about osmosis. If it is a state of mind, it's harmony. If it's a resource, it's faith. And if it's a outcome, it's plenitude or abundance, that kind of energy there. So remember, while yes, in a way, these four keywords here are keywords that are all to do with explaining the energy of that card, but they also have that position awareness that then also tells us even more about that card. What does this concept look like? If it's a state of mind, if it's a resource, if it's a situation, if it's an outcome. And that gives us even more, I think, information than just random keywords at the bottom. Next we have the beautiful communication card. Again, the artwork is stunning. There's a flow to it. There is a movement of both color and even in the line work that I think is absolutely gorgeous. It's just really beautiful. So here we have the cards of communication, and I like that the outcome here is contact, right? So if communication, the point is to connect with and connect with other people, and so the result of that, or the potential outcome of that, would be that. And I love the negotiations. If you're in a situation in which there's negotiations that are involved, we're having to use our words here. So I love the four corners in that understanding of situation, mental space, resource that you have. I think this is really fantastic. And then the outcome energy there. I think it really starts to describe the card. And I know I'm probably going to say that 20 times. I'm going to try not to. But it's really fantastic. So communication. Here we have success. It feels very much like sort of the Great Fortune card or something like that. We have achievement here as the result here. And luck is on our side if that is a resource that we have, and so on and so forth, which I think is just really gorgeous. You can definitely tell by the card types that this feels like it leans more towards the traditional fortune telling cards, where there are cards like luck, there are work cards, there are like the house card, those types of things like that feel quite fortune telling in nature. But then there are also ones that feel a little bit more like a modern oracle as well, and then there are definitely shadow cards. So it's like it feels like a very modern sort of rendition of a fortune-telling style deck, and that of course makes me so happy, right? So here we have the work card. You know, she's working. So that's the other thing I wanted to say. The images do appear, in my opinion, to be made made for the deck. So we have a work card. It's still a beautiful image with this beautiful purples and things, but she has like a chisel and a hammer. She's doing work, right? So we have this understanding here that work is happening. It goes with the image of the card, and that, in my opinion, tends to be the case with the cards. So there we have work. So here we have more of a concept, and I had these in piles when I first did it, because we have things that are specific, like a house, and then we have sort of like, you know, action-y type things like work or something like that. And then we have sort of concepts here, and this idea of gestation and letting something develop and having patience, right? Waiting kind of energy as well, which I think is fantastic to have when reading an oracle. This definitely feels quite full in terms of You know, some oracle decks feel like they are just add-ons to another system. You're going to do a tarot reading and then you're going to pull an oracle card. This feels like, in my experience, is a deck that, you know, you can do sort of full readings with this deck, not as just pulling a single card, even though it can be very good for that as well. So here we have gestation. Here we have evolution, transition, uncertainty, reflection or thinking, and evolution itself is the result, right? The conclusion of this is that full evolution. Here we have influence. This is really interesting, which is almost like somebody is whispering in her ear, sort of like the goddess or something is giving her information. But it's not all, like we have advisors, but we also have doubts in the mental place. You're not sure about the influence that's being had here, needing to use the resource of discernment. And then in the end, are you influenced by that, and is that a good thing or a bad thing? Here we have illusion. I just love this, right? The sleeping person and all of these fantasies and dreams and imagination and coming forward on that. The art is just beautiful. Like, I just love the artwork here. Here we have passion. I like this because it feels to me pretty gender neutral. I could make a case for a man and a woman. I could make a case for two women. I don't know that I would necessarily make a case maybe for two men, but it just kind of feels gender neutral for me, which I quite like having that there in the passion. Desire, impulse, fervor there. I love this mermaid, but this is all tangled up in the nets, the impediment. There's a blockage. You're getting immobilized, right? But there are skills that are involved that could get you out of this situation if this is a resource to get yourself out. But she's very well entangled in this net. So again, the artwork itself beautifully depicts what we're seeing in the card. Here we have the voyage or travel, dynamism. I like the impatience in here and this movement. And the card itself just feels like a movement card. Movement's going on in the water below. So it feels like some kind of like a water sprite or something like that. It's just got energy of movement to it that is really quite beautiful. Land of Fire. So let's read this one because I did get this one a couple times, and you know, this is about difficulties, but it's also like being in the desert and needing to endure. It came up for me, I think, in this position of endurance, and it really was quite appropriate to the reading. Hardships aren't punishments. When they look like a karma that you have to redeem, they remain lessons. Divine justice doesn't avenge, it teaches. If you need a luggage to go forward, you will be given one. As I said, sometimes the English is a little bit tricky, but you get the point of it by the end of it. If you need to learn through your mistakes, you will be given the exercise. It's not like, be careful what you say you'd like a lesson in, because you'll probably get it, right? Do whatever you want in good conscience, but whatever you do, you will always be taught to be good, generous, opening up to other people and to unconditional love. Don't exhaust yourself. Don't lay the blame on others. There is no mistake, just a challenge to make you better. But as a card, I just feel like this is, and the image just really speaking, if you think about, the energy here of this movement, and then you could just feel that weight of the energy here with this endurance card. I just find this to be really beautiful, and again, showed up in a reading quite powerfully. Here we have abandon. We have kind of a cavalier energy here. But then we have a selflessness. We have an energy of letting something go, and we have devotion. So this is where sometimes, while you have this energy of abandon, which the term abandon in English to me has a negative connotation to it. But if the end result is devotion, and if the mindset is selflessness, and if what resources to just be able to let things go when we need to let things go, because that's going to lead to a healthy devotion there. That's a little bit different energy than I think of with the word abandon. So I'm definitely careful not to just land here and say, oh, this is a negative card. Again, you're thinking about what is the situation, which of the corners is showing up, and so on and so forth to get that energy. And I quite like that because I think that a lot of them can go either way, which is quite powerful. Here we have jealousy, like is this sharp. I love this image though, because you've got the green color that we often see associated with jealousy. We have that sharp sting of jealousy. But the resource is analysis, right? To try to analyze the situation. So while, you know, a lot of them are like jealousy, envy, and backbiting, you just get that negative energy there. If the resource that you have that you could improve this is analysis, really think about the situation versus getting pulled away by your energies. So that I think is really powerful with that. Again, sometimes if you're just paying attention to the different keywords, it really opens up a card to being quite interesting. Here we have treason, and again we get some keywords, idea of mistrust, deception, hypocrisy, tearing, so sort of tearing things apart. We have sort of a snake, kind of an Eve in the Garden of Eden feel to this with the snake, and the idea of deception and snakes just kind of always harken me back to that. It's not my favorite image, you know, to use for deception. Poor Eve. But again, these are good cards. These are important cards. This reminds me of, say, like the false person in Kipper or something like that. You know, you need to know when there's something going on that's not quite above board in a particular situation. That's important to be able to know. And it talks about here in the guidebook on this one, don't be distracted by the bad things you hear, because you are the only person who holds your own truth. Take some time to forgive the spiteful tongue who are unwillingly infected by their own poison. Self-image can't be deteriorated by the blurry sight of other people. Whatever happens, and always stand up for your own truth, nurturing your sincerity, your loyalty, your righteousness, so nobody can ever do you harm. You know, if you are not developing your own sense of self through what other people think of you, then this kind of card has energy has far less influence on you than as it should. So I think that's quite, I love having this distance card. You know, there is sometimes this just works. I had this show up as well. I think just as the situation being about distance. And so I love this image. I love this feeling with this little tiny figure. You really get the sense in this small frame, you do get this sense of distance. And I quite love that. There's very fey. I think you can see here, like they don't always, mostly I would say, you know, don't feel overly human to me. It feels very fey in nature, and I quite like that. Here we have introspection. I like the mirrored image for introspection, solitude, introspection, spirituality, reconciliation as that final goal. But I love the mirror image there of reflection. Beautiful hope card, hope, revelation, insight, clarity. See, this is such an interesting one to me, because oftentimes hope, we're just kind of like, I'm just hoping that this is going to turn out. That's kind of how we use that word, even though I don't actually think that's correct. And so I love this idea of getting clarity, that clarity doesn't aids hope. It's not, you know, we don't have to say, you know, I'm not going to look at things clearly so that I can have hope. We can still have clarity. We can still have insight and still have hope. I think that's really a beautiful combination of keywords for this card. I love the manipulation here, right, with the puppet and the puppet strings. Manipulation, servitude, tenacity, constraints. You really feel like you don't have control over a particular situation. I think that's quite powerful. Here we have misfortune card. Again, you would see this often in sort of a fortune-telling style decks. Setbacks, negativity, misadventure. But the resource that you have is perseverance. And I think that's just, again, really, if you work with all four of those, and then of course read it through the lens of the question, read it through the lens of the what position it's in, they're just very nuanced and beautiful. Here we have inspiration, originality, artistic sense, creativity. It's quite beautiful. I love the sun, comprehension, power, truth, vigor. So it's not just happiness. Like sometimes you get that with sun cards. Oh, it just means happiness. Like this has a strong energy to this sun card that I quite love. Then we have the moon. I love pairs. We have the sun, we have the moon. Whereas this is more strong with comprehension and vigor and force and truth. We have mystery and wisdom and spiritualism and blessing with the moon. That's really quite powerful. And you do get a little bit of that masculine, feminine energy there. This is one, I'm going to set this aside because I want to read this with another. This was one that I had there were two cards that I had to sort of sort out what was going on here. Actually, let's go ahead and read this one, because again, I think that it's just the English, and it's not enough. Like most of these are spot on, and once I've read the things, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense, and then it was never a problem. This talks about the reed doesn't have a glorious symbolism, swaying from right to left with the wind. Opportunist is always follows the strongest gust of wind. From another point of view, this card wants you to bend without breaking. When winds and gales are blowing, your ability grants you an intelligent resilience. Without complying, you learn not to exhaust yourself when facing the unleashed elements. Then you are, like the reed, able to get over the harshest ordeals, which prove to be nutrients for your spiritual being in need of growth. According to Job 8:2, does the reed grow without humidity, without the water there. So I think of fickleness. I think of this more as being resiliency, and I think there may be a resilience card. I'm going to set it to the side, but it's that idea of flexibility, even though there is some indecision because you're just moving with the wind, right? So I think that we could see this first and say fickleness, this is a negative card, but when you read it, this can go either way. It depends on the situation, which is what a good card should be. So that was one that I did take a look at. Here we have delay. This is a great card to have in a deck because sometimes it's not a full blockage. Sometimes it's just there's some things that are delaying things. And so I really enjoy having that card come into being. Here we have a suffering card because sometimes we're suffering, right? There is pain, there is hurt, there is suffering in the world, and this card quite reflects that. I love all of the thorns here and just entanglement. It feels like somebody who is completely entangled in that suffering. So there we have that. Here we have beauty, charisma, charm, wonder, distinction. Here we have hesitation, caution. The ground seems like these are literally seem like bubbles. Like this is like a fey creature, and these are like such light bubbles. So you're having to be really careful here of what's going on. Almost seems to be balanced on the very tip of something, and so there is that sort of hesitating. Be cautious, right? But the outcome could be to that decision making. So it's quite interesting, the system, when you start to use it again with the four corners. And I know I'm repeating myself, but it's so important. Again, see the Fae energy? Like this looks like we're looking at underwater Fae, but that they're both Fae creatures. Here's sensitivity, vulnerability, sensitivity, upheaval, emotions, right? There is this motion of water in this particular card. Very Fae feeling here. Here we have alliance. Although they seem quite chained together. Let's take a look at this one. Because again, the chains, like they are, this is like the ring card, right? But it's with chains. you are associated with people, passions in a karmic way. It means that whatever you do in order to deny or destroy this bond, it will remain perfect and pure. With this card, you are asked to accept this bond, painful as it is, because the reason of its existence is rightfully yours. It has to evolve with much time and patience as the soul. It is a powerful energy, the scope of which is often underestimated. Respect this relationship, accept it, because you will understand one day the reason. So it is a having to trust that there is a reason for this strong connection. It's quite interesting, right? Because it's not just like marriage, like a union of a marriage and happily ever after that you often see. It is the understanding that we are sometimes linked with people for good and bad, and that can, though, either way lead to something, and you just may have to deal with that. So I think that's quite powerful. I love this message card here. I love the bird. It's just, I think it's a great message card. Again, you have to have a message card in a good fortune telling deck. Here we have a death card, transformation, can be affliction, questioning what's going on, but in the end it's an energy of renewal. And you can really see this with the darkness, and then this renewed energy above. You can understand this is talking about major shifts and major transformations. So I think it's really gorgeous. Here we have an accident. Strings are broken here. There's a trauma, but we still have this resilience that's here. That's quite interesting, and it could lead to something that's unexpected in the outcome, which I quite love. Here we have the man and the woman card. This one is with inertia or slowing down, whereas with the man, it's with growth. We have duality and unity versus unity. We have balance versus energy. We have a slowdown versus an expansion. So you really have these typical understandings of masculine and feminine energy, and versus really thinking about these in terms of male and female. I do quite like that we have sort of the triple goddess here. We have what seems to be more of like Cernunnos, or some sort of masculine god energy. So it's really talking about those archetypal energies versus just a man and a woman, versus gender. And I think that really stands out quite well there. I love this house. Mansion, protection, steadiness, restraint. I just love the image of this house as well. We have progress, passage, intuition, impulse, progression. Again, this movement, this pulling here. And it's almost literally like this angelic figure is kind of pulling them along in a way, and kind of taking them through this particular passage, which is really beautiful. Here we have infertility, destitution, emptiness, sterility. But what resource that we have is contentment. That, you know, sometimes having this space of what seems like, you know, land is laying fallow, that's what winter is about, right? And so sometimes being content where you're at, because it's that season may change. So it's very interesting there, and I've had that come up in that way that I just thought was really powerful. Here we have fortune, abundance, generosity, gratitude. You know, this is sort of that good fortune card. I feel like I'm going to leave this out for a minute. We'll make a little bit of piles. But on the other side of fortune is bankruptcy. Things that are deteriorating, things that have gone to ruin, prostration, right? There is just that sense of the opposite of fortune. So there's definitely some nice pairs to be found as I'm making piles, but there are some great pairs like we saw with the masculine and feminine, the sun and the moon. There are some great pairs that are there even in concepts. So yes, we have the, well, how everything is wonderful card, but we also have where things aren't so wonderful. So you've got both sides. We have judgment, responsibility, litigation. I can even think with this litigation, it can almost feel a little bit like the court card, like in Kipper or something like that, that can be really useful. We have the meeting card, exchanges, accessibility, meeting. Again, this is a Kipper card as well. So you do get that sense of like these fortune-telling style decks. I love, so we have the child, so we have the man, the woman, and we have the child card. Recklessness, curiosity, immaturity, but also a gift, which is beautiful. Here we have a breakup card. This is, you know, a separation, a detachment. So this is different than just being apart, right? This is literally, you know, something that was together that isn't anymore. And you can literally see that breaking apart there in between the two people like that. Here we have one called Hell. You know, this is temper and risks and anger. It's that high red energy, and you can really see it in the color. Let's take a look at this one. Again, just to have a sort of, after suffering too much, being through too many things, facing adversity, injustice, the flame of your fighting spirit that was shining inside of you when you were a child becomes a furnace, which shows our strength, our courage, our determination. It is a good thing when this fire helps you serve good causes, but it becomes harmful when this fire devours you and makes you quarrel with other people, destroying forgiveness. The furnace is neutral. Master it and you will dig up a divine energy from it. If you let it burn you down, an unhealthy energy will be leading you. The choice is yours. So again, even with what seems to be quite a negative position to be in, there is a thing such as righteous anger, right? But you have to be careful that it doesn't burn you up. And so I really like how the guidebook references that. Here we have the Treasure. I thought we already looked at this, but that was in because it was in my reading, but we did already look at that. So we have that card there. Here we have Heaven. Of course, we had Hell, so we have to have Heaven. I think you can see already that there is, there's just a lot of balance in the cards with the energies that are at play. So we had to have Hell, and now we have a Heaven here. This feels very like Kuan Yin to me. Not it is, but that's just kind of the feeling that I equate with that. Here we have friendship. Friendship, empathy, mutual aid, kindness here. Here we have the Shadow, incomprehension, self-deception, discernment. Again, what is our resource? Let's bring discernment to the shadow, right? And then what can happen, though, as a result can be, and this can be concealment. We're just keeping things in the shadow. But I love that it's like a dragonfly or something, or even a moth or a butterfly, something that can actually transform into something else. I love this Fighting Spirit card. This warrior energy. Yes, there are obstacles, but you're motivated and you're rising up to the challenge, and there is a righteousness to this particular fighting energy that I think is just really fantastic. I love this color. It really stands out. The deck is, as a whole, more cool tones, and so then the reds and the yellows really pop out. You know, when you get cards like these, they really pop out because of the rest of the cool tones. Here we have obsession, fixation, obstinacy, and sort of holding on to things in a way that is probably not particularly healthy, right? I love this protection card. I've had this come up as well. I love the energy is prudence with protection, which is interesting. Preservation, providence, safety. I just think that's gorgeous. We talked about the Jester card. Here we have the past. So I love this. These are the sands that were before they fell. Nostalgia, taking root, some regret potentially, experience here. Beautiful harmony card. I love a card with serenity, calmness, sweetness, peace. Here we have the Book. Learning, we have knowledge, we have erudition, we have education. You know, if you're like me and love fortune telling style decks, you gotta have a book card. Here we have glee. I like this word. Enthusiasm, glee, rejoicing, effervescence. It's just beautiful flow. Again, the cards are just stunning. Like, the artwork is beautiful. I love the choice. I also like the threshold and the door type card. There's a door card in Deste that I quite love, and other sort of decks as well. I think a door card is fantastic. This idea of stepping up, that call to action. Are you going to step into that or not? So here is the fickleness. Okay. Yeah, so we have 2 cards with fickleness on the bottom. And so let's read the fickleness one. And again, once I read this, I was like, okay, that makes sense. And it's just through, translation, I think, that we get. So fickleness here, wisdom tells us that there are 3 things that one can't hide indefinitely: the sun, the moon, and truth. And everything be honest and true. What you will try to hide will be revealed one day or another, and that will affect all of the people who are involved. To live in peace with a clean conscience, in addition to the practice of forgiveness for your mistakes. So this is more what I would say as fickleness, right? The inconstancy, yes, there's adaptability that's there, lunatism, surprise, things being unearthed. It almost looks like a coffin is being opened up and we're going to learn the secrets. So to me, this one has a little bit more of the negative connotation, whereas this to me is much more about flexibility, and moving. And again, that can have its negative sides, but that's 2 different kinds of energies. And I think that fickleness probably goes more with this card, and this one I would probably put something like flexibility or adaptability or something. But they work, if you're using your corners, and once you know the cards, they're not any problems. So I noticed this when I first had gone through the deck, but in terms of using the deck, once I sorted it out for myself, it was absolutely no issue. And also you'll see that you have different French names at the top, and so I kind of go off of that as well, and I think I've shoved them right out of there. So we have that. Here we have hostility. Oops, let's go back to the middle here. Conflict. You can just see, this is a fantastic card. Like, animal spirit to animal spirit, person to person, like there is just that confrontational energy here. It's like not just the people, but their animal energies are coming into play as well. It's really quite a powerful image. It's one of my favorite images in the deck. Here we have negotiations, compromise, strategy, flexibility, association. Then we have the fatality. I think that this one is more along the lines of fate. I think fatality is probably not the best English word, because that's more to do with death, and we already have a death card, right? And so this is far more to do with understanding and accepting what is, thinking that idea of fate. That is there, and you can see that right here with the fate, acceptance, duties, a bit of a dejection, thinking you're stuck with this. I absolutely love this image. There's nothing they can do about this comet that is falling, right? This is sort of, it's like you see that comet in the sky and it's representing maybe hard times are ahead, so they have to just kind of find a way to accept that this is what it is and work with it. But image wise, I love this image. And then we have this beautiful beginning. Again, very Fae. Like, to me, this feels like a Fae deck. My energy and my workings with Fae are far earthier, and this feels much more ethereal. But I just, I think they're beautiful. And so, let me zoom out here. I don't do very good with piles. I was trying to get an idea. There are definitely far more, I would say probably far more female. However, there are a lot that are either neutral or contain both. So it actually is far more balanced. Some, just are objects, like they don't really have anything either way, or are just very neutral. There are quite a lot that I think to me are neutral, like that, and this has both in it. This doesn't have anything. So it's actually far more balanced in that way. Obviously I didn't just do like a 1-to-1 piles, but just in general it actually feels a lot more neutral, just very Fae on either side. So I would say more neutral, and maybe leaning towards feeling slightly feminine, but just in a movement way that's quite beautiful. So I love it. I love the artwork. It is a big deck in terms of hand size. Like I'm a riffle shuffler, and this is very hard. I have to, but I can get a good riffle. And then I just overhand it because that's just too hard on my hands. Would I cut this off? No, I would not cut these borders off because I absolutely love this system, and you would be taking that system away. So no, I have absolutely zero intentions. I also have zero intentions of doing the edges. You could do like a light purple, but I actually really like the white sides in person with the whites that are on the back. So I just think it's beautiful as it is. It overhand shuffles really well, even with its, because it's more the tallness than the wideness. So it's pretty comfortable. And I do have a larger, I think, hands for a woman, but I have no issue. I try to get one riffle in like that, and then just overhand it. And I've mostly always, I'm just doing this. What is the situation? There's some sort of, something is separating, something is breaking apart. What's the mindset here? The mindset is gratitude, okay? Maybe this is something to be grateful for. It may not feel like it right now, but this actually may pan out in the end. What is the resource? So we're going over here, or I'm sorry, we're going over here to just be bold. Understand that this is as it needs to be, and just enter into the situation boldly. That is your resource. And then we do see that there are still going to be difficulties ahead. Go forth boldly. Separation's never easy, so it is going to be difficult, but you're going to be able to endure the situation. So it's just, I just love this system. Like, I am so in love with this. I think a lot of thought and a lot of intentionality went into the making of this deck, and it just makes my heart happy to see that in a system like this. So this has been a joy. Hopefully this helped in some way. I'll put a link to the website below because this is not something like you can pick up on Amazon. It's definitely something to pick up from the creator. But it's been a joy. It was a joy to be able to do this walkthrough after having used it. You know, that's a different quality. I love first impressions because first impression things are a lot of fun to do, and I think that getting people's first reactions is a lot of fun to watch. But I also, when there's a system in place like this, I think it also can be very helpful to see, okay, but after use it's pretty, but after using it, what do you think? And so this in this case, you are able to see both of those things at once versus coming later down the road to see what I think of it. I think it's pretty awesome. So there you have it. I hope this has helped, and I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day.